started kind of a lifelong journey since then of studying Arabic in different places. I got opportunity because I was studying Arabic. I got multiple opportunities to travel to Arabic-speaking countries, especially in North Africa. I got to
Yeah.
go to Morocco. I studied multiple times in Egypt, in Cairo, and um, and I guess in learning about these places and their cultures and really immersing myself in the Arab world and the Arabic language, I came to learn more about um, these other languages that are in those regions that we
Hmm.
don't really hear about as much. Um,
So, what are some examples of the languages found in North Africa? I mean, clearly Arabic is a huge language in North Africa. Different dialects, I assume. But what else? What other languages would you encounter traveling North Africa?
so um, So I think one of the largest language families, apart from Arabic, that's indigenous to North Africa, is the Amazigh languages,
Uh huh.
also called Berber languages. Some people have a problem with that term. Some people don't.
Okay.
Uh, so I try to err on the side of caution and say Amazigh. Um, and you can find it pretty widely spoken in Morocco,
Okay.
although just visiting, you may not know.
Uh huh.
You might not even know this because in metropolitan areas, French and Arabic are much more dominant. Although there's been kind of an Amazigh language rights movement the past several decades that have brought it a lot more visibility, especially in places like Morocco and Algeria.
Mm.
But the further east you go in North Africa, kind of the more that diminishes. In Tunisia and Libya and Egypt, you see there are also Amazigh varieties, but um, they're smaller communities
Mm.
generally, um, with even less resources for their languages and less visibility.
Now,
Egypt. Okay. Oh, sorry.
if someone that speaks that language, are they typically going to be multilingual, or are there many monolinguals that speak that language?
Um, I would say I would say in Morocco, I think there are plenty of rural and mountain and
Uh-huh.
more isolated areas where you would find monolingual speakers of, for example, Teshilhit or
Mm.
Tamazight. Um, but I think in places like Libya and Egypt, I would say, to my knowledge, most people are bilingual in that and Arabic,
Okay.
if they're even still speaking their heritage language.
Yeah.
Uh, Although I'm making kind of an educated guess about that.
Okay.
I'll give you exact figures.
Yeah. I'm hoping to go to Morocco later this year, and that'll be my very first time to any part of Africa. At this point in time, I speak English as a native. I speak some conversational French, and then I speak Spanish fairly well. What are my chances? Like if I'm in a marketplace and then I need to approach somebody, I'll try to learn a little bit of Arabic to just introduce myself. But what language am I more likely to be successful with out of those three?
In Morocco, I think it depends on where you are. I think there's a small isolated area of the country. I think there's one city where they were owned by Spain and they
Okay.
speak Spanish. But in general, lots of people will see that you're foreign and will try to speak French to you,
Okay.
um, that you don't know Arabic. At least that was my experience. Um, which is bad if you're there to study Arabic
Yeah,
because
yeah. In my case, it's going to be good though because I can practice my French with them. Especially, it's always fun and exciting for me to be in a situation where the person really doesn't speak English. It's not an option to switch to that. So I can try to, we can try to do our best with our second language, French, on both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting kind of linguistic situation in Morocco, because there's kind of these two languages that are dominating the public sphere that have different types of prestige. There's classical Arabic and there's French. Arabic is seen as, the language of religion and the language of history and cultural roots, and French is seen as this kind of language of progress and modernity. And so there's this kind of tension between them. And you see that, but then you see the actual daily language of most people is Darija, the local, that's what they call the Moroccan dialects.
Okay. So by Moroccan dialect of Arabic?
Yes,
okay.
Moroccan dialect of Arabic.
Got it.
And, it is Arabic. It sounds very different from varieties of Arabic you'll find further east. I, for example, as a speaker of Egyptian Arabic, have a lot of trouble understanding Moroccan Arabic. And there's a lot of code switching with French.
Okay.
You might listen to a conversation and not be sure if the last sentence was French or Arabic, and it might have been
a mix. I was in Switzerland one time, and a lady approached me in Portuguese, and I don't speak any Portuguese, and I tried to switch to English and French, and she wasn't having it. And then I asked her if she spoke Spanish in Spanish, and she said no. But then we went on to have like a 20-minute conversation where she spoke Portuguese and I spoke Spanish. And for the most part, I was able to follow along with her. We understood each other. But she actually lived in Switzerland, so she would mix in some German. And whenever she mixed in German, which I don't speak a word of, that's when I would get really lost.
Yeah. You could definitely find situations like that with, communicating with Arabic speakers of very different varieties. I think it's a rare feeling of, oh, why did they just mix in French?
So I have a question for you. I noticed on your channel that one of the things that you've done is you've done the Egyptian word of the day, which I think is really cool. So Egyptian Arabic word of the day. And you usually, if not always, list the modern standard Arabic equivalent. So could you talk about how mutually intelligible modern standard Arabic, or I heard you say classical Arabic, is that the same thing?
That's a difficult question to answer.
Okay.
Are they the same thing? Yes and no. Modern Standard Arabic is very, very similar to Classical Arabic.
Okay.
Really, the primary difference between them is their age and the types of texts that are produced in the genre.
Okay.
And there's some grammatical and lexical differences.
Okay.
But they're pretty more or less, well, minor is a relative thing to say.
Yeah, of course. Okay, but between Egyptian Arabic and either modern standard Arabic or classic Arabic, you can respond thinking about either of those forms of Arabic. How mutually intelligible are they?
So mutual intelligibility, that's also a difficult question to answer. I would say, so most Egyptians learn modern standard Arabic in school.
Okay.
So to them, they're pretty mutually intelligible. The line between them is fuzzy. Educated Egyptian speakers will mix modern standard Arabic into their speech, depending on the social circumstances. And there's a lot of interesting things about actually how they do that particular mixing. Some studies about the way people mix their dialect with modern standard Arabic varies from country to country.
Okay.
And you can see kind of interesting kind of emergent grammatical rules that come into play. But in general, Egyptian, it's fairly different from modern standard Arabic, especially if you're coming at it from, from an English speaker's perspective.
Right.
A lot of times when we start out learning a dialect for the first time, a teacher will hand you kind of a list of rules for, this letter starts being pronounced this way, usually, and this letter, and this letter, and this letter. They, like one, I think, really prominent example is the letter jim, which typically makes j or j sound.
Okay.
Pronounced like a g in Egypt. But beyond that, the grammar is pretty different.
Okay. I remember one time I was working in a school district. My job before I retired and became a YouTuber, I was leading language development in an elementary school district. And one of the things that came across my desk was that there was a family that only spoke Arabic. They didn't speak any English or Spanish or any of the other languages that we had easy resources for. And we wanted, the principal and the teacher wanted to meet with the parents, but they wanted to get somebody to help them interpret. So I knew of somebody who spoke Arabic in the district that could help. And I remember contacting them, and they were very concerned about, well, which dialect of Arabic do they speak? Because she was really concerned, even though she was a native speaker of Arabic, she felt that it really mattered what dialect they spoke, because otherwise she felt like she wasn't going to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a valid concern. I feel pretty comfortable having conversations about most things in Egyptian Arabic, which, I'm glad I chose that one. It's a very widely understood dialect because of Egypt's really strong media industry. Their movies and TV shows and songs are heard all over the Arab world. So,
so a little bit like American English in the English-speaking world. I know there's probably more mutual intelligibility with different dialects of English than there is in Arabic. But as far as people understanding our American accents, I find that people usually do, and I attribute a lot of that to the fact that American television and film is so widespread. So it sounds like there is a little bit of similarity there with Egyptian in the Arabic world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's kind of this interesting phenomenon I've seen, when you're looking at interactions with speakers of another dialect, where a lot of times people will try to accommodate the other speaker by attempting to speak their dialect.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've noticed a lot of Arabs will switch to Egyptian to speak to me.
Okay.
And, it'll be, whatever it is, Saudi accented Egyptian Arabic.
Yeah.
Or Yemeni or whatever it is. And, people have sort of differing degrees of familiarity with it, depending on how they grew up and things. I worked with a Lebanese teacher once when I was an Arabic teacher. And she said, we didn't have a TV when I was growing up, and she had a lot of trouble understanding me, actually.
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting to me because I thought that the Levantine dialects were more particularly close to Egyptian and a little easier, but the differences became pretty apparent the longer I was working with her.
Oh, really?
And when I was living in Cairo, I lived in an area called Du'i, which happens to have a large Yemeni population.
Okay.
Most of them are displaced from, the circumstances in Yemen. And I would go to the barber shop, and it was all these Yemeni guys. And my barber, he had been in Egypt for a few years, and he could kind of code switch to the Egyptian dialect for me, and then back to Yemeni to talk to the other guys, and I wouldn't understand a single word.
Oh, really?
But one time I went when he wasn't there, and it was like his brother who had only recently gotten there and couldn't code switch into Egyptian Arabic yet.
Okay.
And we had a lot of trouble communicating.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which was, interesting. Because, the Yemeni dialect is not widely known. They don't have that type of soft power that Egyptian or Levantine dialects have with, a strong media presence. So it's kind of, the linguistic situation in these places is complicated because there's this dominating force of standard Arabic, compounded by whatever European colonizer brought their language,
right?
And then that leads to this kind of really kind of sad devaluation of the local Arabic variety. And then beyond that, whatever other minority languages exist there.
Right.
So
it sounds like it's like less than
crushed under the weight of these.
Yeah, it sounds like there's so many competing forces that a local language, especially a local language that's not Arabic, that it's sad to see any time that a language is not valued. Where anybody who studies linguistics knows that every language is equally important in how well it can help people communicate, and as a key to valuable cultural insights, and and that seems to be an issue in several parts of the world. But it's interesting to learn about the specific North African situation. So tell me a little bit about, you've done a lot of work with different writing systems. So tell me about some of the writing systems and what it is that you're doing.
Okay, yeah. The first writing system that I learned after, the Latin alphabet was Arabic in that program I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of struck by, it's really difficult learning another writing system.
Yeah.
It adds a whole new dimension to the language learning process. And it was a long time before I really took a deeper interest in writing systems. But I heard via Twitter the Endangered Alphabets Project, which is run by a guy named Tim Brooks.
Okay.
I definitely recommend checking out his website, the Endangered Alphabets Project, which I volunteer for. The goal is to document all of the writing systems of the world and kind of help assess which communities need support in order to, create, whether it's creating, just raising awareness about their community needs, or more specifically about helping fund the creation of educational materials for promoting literacy in the local writing systems. And it's like, when we talk about linguistics, we're very focused on the spoken, unspoken languages, to the detriment of, writing systems as a discipline and also sign languages.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought this was a really interesting project because, we don't really talk about writing systems that much in linguistics, but it is this kind of really important invention that different cultures have created really unique ways of writing down information and preserving knowledge that way. And I think it's important to look into why those processes happen and and celebrate the diversity of it.
I always find it interesting too, like why a specific language chose a specific writing system. And of course, many languages don't have a writing system at all. Just to put that out there. And then there are also a decent amount of languages that have more than one writing system. And so when I was looking through your channel, I was looking through some of the different writing systems that you've gone over and you were teaching on your channel. I noticed that a lot of them are abajads.
Mm-hmm.
And could you explain what that is to the listener?
Yeah, so an abjad is basically a writing system that doesn't write the vowels. It's just the consonants. At least that's what a pure abjad would be.
Yeah.
Most of the Semitic abjads aren't pure abjads in that they might include letters for long vowels but not short vowels.
Okay.
For example, Arabic is a great example of that. I think Hebrew as well, although my Hebrew is not much more than a few lessons on Duolingo.
Oh, okay. I've noticed that people that I think from an English speaker's perspective, or really a lot of different European languages, it seems almost impossible. Like, how could you have a writing system where you don't document the vowels? But then when you see even just English text, a lot of people have seen like memes with English text where they've taken all the vowels out. It's remarkably easy to read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is definitely something that's a little challenging when you're first learning Arabic. That you look at a word and you're like, okay, I know what letters those are, but I'm still not quite sure how to pronounce it.
Right.
But it becomes it's interesting because I think as you learn the language, once you know what the words are, you can the consonants are enough to retrieve the full word form from your brain.
I think that's absolutely the key because I spent many years teaching kids how to read. Many of them were learning to read in a language that wasn't their first language. Many of them were native Spanish speakers, learning to read in English. And, one of the differences between like English and Spanish is very much like one phoneme to one grapheme. It's one letter basically makes one sound. So if you are reading and you don't have a good level of Spanish vocabulary, you can read through it and you can figure out how to pronounce it. You read an English word and it could vary so much from the way that it's actually pronounced that if you're a native speaker or a proficient speaker, you have sufficient vocabulary to be able to figure it out because you get close enough and then it reminds you of the real word. I would imagine that would be the same process, although I've never learned a writing system that's an abjad. I would assume that's the same process, is that if you have ample vocabulary, it's probably no problem whatsoever. But if you're somebody like me who would just be beginning to learn the language, that seems like that would be a huge challenge because even if you're successfully decoding each of the consonants, it may not match a word that you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Arabic has innovated these accent marks that represent short vowels and a few other things, okay, which can make the pronunciation completely transparent.
Okay.
The problem is people don't use that in everyday writing.
Yeah.
It's really only for for children's books or instructional things.
Okay.
Or for holy text.
Okay.
And the reason for that is you don't want to mispronounce the word of God.
Yeah.
The Semitic abajads are really interesting because Semitic languages have this interesting grammar system for their morphology, which some people call root and pattern morphology, some people call templatic morphology, where basically a word and lots of kind of related meanings come from a triconsonantal root, so 3 consonants in a row.
Okay.
And depending on what vowels you put in between and around them, the kind of the exact usage of the word changes. So, for example, this is a pretty classic example. The word for book in Arabic is kitab,
Okay.
and it has the root KTB.
Okay.
And so you have an I and then a long A, kitab. But then if you want to make it into the past tense of he wrote, it's kataba. So KTB, but the vowels are in a different place. I think one of the ways to say a letter is maktub. So you add ma, and then there's an u between the second and third root letters. And you can do that with, basically every word. I mean, there's lots of exceptions and other rules to learn, but I think that's one of the really cool things about the Semitic languages is that system. And that's why it's so interesting that they have this writing system that just writes the consonants, because those, those short vowels are even more important sometimes for distinguishing those word forms.
So there, I would assume that you have to take in context, and you have to take in the, all of the surrounding words to figure out, which form of this word are they trying to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, you really have to know not just a lot of words, but the grammar as well to look at a text and be able to pronounce it correctly. At least in classical and standard Arabic. When you get to colloquial Arabic, you run into problems where there's no formalized way for how to write it exactly.
Okay.
People are kind of making up their own systems informally, and we've seen interesting things happen with writing Arabic on the internet. And this 3-vowel system that they use for standard Arabic, they have 3 different accent marks for each short vowel.
Okay.
It doesn't really work anymore because the colloquial varieties of Arabic have slightly different vowel systems now.
Okay.
Some of them have 5 vowel systems. Some of them have less. So making the pronunciation transparent is a somewhat more complicated issue now for colloquial Arabic.
Yeah, I know, like in English, one of the common criticisms of English orthography is that it doesn't represent very well the oral language. But what it does do is that it gives us a common writing system, so that if I'm say grass, or I say grass, or whatever the vowels are, we all can interpret it using our own dialect. So it's interesting to see when writing systems serve or don't serve well to unify different dialects of a language.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, kind of this process of a writing system is reformed or invented, and it fits perfectly to the whatever variety of language they're writing it for, and then a few hundred years later, we're kind of like, why are we writing it this way?
What language you're making me think of is Korean. Korean, my understanding is that Korean used to use Chinese characters, and that at one point in history, the king or the ruler or whatever created Hangul, which is what they use right now, and it's very phonetic. In fact, it's so phonetic visually, it actually matches some of the shapes you do in your mouth when you make those sounds. So anybody who studied linguistics looks at Hangul and the Korean writing system and goes, "Oh wow, this is magic. This is so transparent." But it's transparent now. It'll be interesting to see. You'll be beyond our lifetime, but a few hundred years from now or 1,000 years from now, how transparent will it be then? So if you are somebody who doesn't speak any of these languages and you want to learn um, Arabic, what form of Arabic would you recommend that, let's say, an American learn first?
Mhm. I would say it really depends on what your motivation for learning Arabic is.
Okay.
I think there's a few different kinds of common motivations people have for learning Arabic. One, maybe they're interested in it for religious reasons. In that case, I say go straight for classical Arabic.
Yeah.
Maybe they're learning it because they have some kind of connection to a specific Arab country. In that case, I would say go for the local dialect of that country,
Yeah.
in conjunction with standard Arabic. I think to really be a competent Arabic speaker, you really have to master modern standard Arabic and at least one local dialect. If you're missing one or the other, you're gonna have communication problems.
Yeah.
Um,
That's interesting.
And I think it's important to recognize a lot of people don't recognize this, that both serve their own function. Modern Arabic as kind of this kind of unifying force across the Arab world that makes cross dialect communication easier, and is a literary language and is a language that helps connect to thousands of years of history, but these local dialects really have their own value too, that a lot of people don't see in local specific media and specifically local culture, as opposed to global or at the level of the whole Arab world.
If you speak, let's say you're a native speaker of Egyptian Arabic, and then you learn modern standard Arabic in school or classical Arabic in school, and then you travel to a different part of the Arab speaking world, like let's say Morocco. Are you going to go through town approaching people in modern standard Arabic because you don't speak the local dialect? Does it serve like as a lingua franca?
So I would say it varies from country to country, and that's
Okay.
another thing made more complicated by languages that have been introduced through European colonization. So sometimes people will actually rely on English as a lingua franca,
Okay.
or on French. But having that shared knowledge of classical Arabic will definitely help if they're trying to communicate in Arabic.
Yeah.
And as for what people do, I think it also depends on the person.
Yeah.
I think it might depend specifically on their upbringing and their cultural values and their linguistic ideologies, and kind of, sometimes there's this kind of phenomenon where a lot of American students who study Arabic are just taught standard Arabic and then go to study abroad, and they can't understand anyone.
That's got to be so frustrating. Have to put all that effort and then not be able to communicate with locals.
And so I've had some interesting experiences where I studied the Egyptian dialect for a while, but every once in a while I'd meet someone who would expect me to only speak standard Arabic, and so talk to me in standard Arabic. But there's this kind of off-puttingness about speaking standard Arabic in daily life. People kind of see it as like, why are you talking like a robot, or like or it kind of sounds like you're a cartoon character, because a lot of cartoons are dubbed in standard Arabic. and I think there's a few reasons for that. One is, you wouldn't have to dub it once for each country, and two, it's supposed to support children learning standard Arabic.
Right. How interesting, though, that you would sound like a cartoon character to them. That's that's an interesting take on that. Interesting interpretation.
But people's kinds of views on that really vary from person to person.
Okay.
I've had people say like, "Oh, why would I ever be embarrassed to speak?" We call standard Arabic Fusha. It means like the most eloquent language. Yeah. And people use Fusha as kind of a cover-all term to refer to both modern standard and classical Arabic.
Okay.
Some people are like, "Oh, why would I ever be embarrassed to speak Fusha? Like, I'll do it right now."
Right. Yeah.
Some people would feel really comfortable speaking Fusha with someone from another country.
Mm-hmm. Now, you live in the United States, right on the East Coast?
Yeah, that's right.
So, is there an Arabic-speaking community near you at all?
Yeah, actually. So I'm here in Boston, and I'm actually just north of Boston in a city called Revere.
Okay.
And some of the surrounding cities have a very large Moroccan community.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I actually went to a Moroccan barber the other day.
All right. So you have had some chances to speak a little bit of Arabic in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think there's there are different Arab communities in different parts of the U.S. for sure.
Yeah.
Here is definitely heavier on Moroccan, but you can also find there's some Levantine, like Lebanese, for example. Some Egyptians, but it's not a big Egyptian community here.
Okay.
And then because Boston has so many universities, there's international students from all over the world.
Yeah.
But I've heard. I don't know. I'm curious about Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Are there any large Arab communities there?
Not that I know of. Where I do think of Arabic is in the city of Anaheim. Mm-hmm. I used to work in Anaheim and live near Anaheim, which is about 90 minutes away from Palm Springs, where I live now. And there definitely was an Arabic-speaking community within the city of Anaheim. What dialect they speak, honestly, I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if it's a mix of people from different parts of the Arab-speaking world, or if it's predominantly a specific group of people, that speak a specific dialect. I'm going to have to look into that. But in Palm Springs, you can definitely hear a lot of Spanish spoken, obviously English. I do know that there's some Korean. I've seen like Korean churches nearby. And then, of course, it's a tourist community, so you hear a lot of different East Asian languages and European languages just based on the tourists. Like, there's a lot of hiking nearby. We'll go on hikes, and you'll hear, languages from all over the world. So tell us a little bit, before we wrap this up, tell us a little bit, what are some of your plans for your channel, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so my plans for my channel, at the moment, I'm going to be continuing these short series I've been doing of the Egyptian Arabic word of the day, and I'm doing a series on beginning hieroglyphs for Middle Egyptian, and I've been doing these sort of just showing how to write some of these different writing systems that I'm creating script learning apps for.
Awesome.
But I've kind of been planning my first big video I want to do kind of a linguistic overview of all of Egypt, just kind of giving general information that a lot of people don't know about all of the different linguistic varieties in Egypt, whether from the different Arabic varieties to the original Egyptian and Coptic varieties to minority languages that a lot of Egyptians, if you ask them, don't know that they're there, like the Siwi language, the two Nubian languages, and the Berber language.
I think that's super valuable because, like, my background is in linguistics. I have a degree in linguistics. But let's face it, in the United States, they're focused in more on European languages. And then when you get past European languages, you know, maybe some Japanese or Mandarin or Korean. But there's a whole wealth of languages, honestly, in all parts of the world. And I feel Africa is, there's not enough attention paid to Africa in the United States, even when it comes to like the news. So, you know, I'm fascinated by it. I feel like even though my degree is in linguistics, I feel like I'm very much a novice when it comes to those areas. But I'm fascinated by it. I'd love to. That's a video I would love to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still ways in the making. I've got a long to-do list, but I'm hoping to eventually make content more regularly.
Yeah, the challenge of a YouTuber, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I would love to talk to you again sometime, maybe after you do your video, if you're interested in that. And please, everybody, go check out his channel, North African Linguistics. Again, in the description, I'll put links to his channel so that you can subscribe to his channel. Also to your blog. And if there's anything else, just send it my way, and I'll make sure to put it down there.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Andy. It was a real pleasure meeting you, and yeah, looking forward to seeing more from your channel.
Yeah, thank you. Well, hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again sometime. Thank you very much.
Thank you.